Your Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Here on today's episode, we got a little bit of something different in store for you all, as today's show is centered around the 10-year anniversary of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, Tuesday, June 16th, it's the 10-year anniversary of when the Locked On Podcast Network first opened up shop. Now, obviously, Locked On Blackhawks and the Locked On NHL Network hasn't been running for quite as long, and I haven't been the host of this show for the last 10 years, but been the host for pretty close to half of that amount and have gotten to witness a majority of the Blackhawks' top moments from over the last 10 years. But in honor of the 10-year anniversary of the network here on today's episode, wanted to get into a little bit of something different and wanted to talk about, like I just mentioned, some of the best moments from the Blackhawks and from the podcast as well over the last 10 years. In segment 2, I'm also going to go over the top 10 best Blackhawks to play for the team over the last 10 years. And then in segment 3 as well, going to go through a slew of Blackhawks legends. And if you're a regular listener or watcher of the show, then you'll know what I mean by Blackhawks legends. A little bit of sarcasm involved in there, wink, wink. But kicking things off here on today's episode, I tried to break down the 10 best moments for the Chicago Blackhawks over the last 10 years. And now 10 years ago today would make it June 16th, 2016. The Blackhawks were just coming off of an unfortunate first round playoff loss to the division rival St. Louis Blues. I was actually in attendance for game 6 of that series, which technically, aside from the 2020 COVID bubble, which will actually be, spoiler alert, referenced here in just a moment, that is technically the Blackhawks' last official Stanley Cup playoff win, Game 6 at the United Center against the St. Louis Blues to force Game 7, where unfortunately former Blackhawk Stanley Cup champion Troy Brouwer ended up breaking our hearts. But the 2016-2017 season, the following season from 10 years ago, there were still, a majority of the 3-time Stanley Cup champions from the dynasty era of the Blackhawks, such as Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, Duncan Keith, Marian Hossa, Brent Seabrook, Corey Crawford. 16-17 wound up being, I believe, the final year of Nicholas Hjalmarsson, or maybe he was around. Yeah, 2016-17 wound up being that final season for Nicholas Hjalmarsson as well. So there were still a lot of the legendary Chicago Blackhawks still around, but obviously weren't able to go and accomplish that 4th Stanley Cup championship together. But as far as the 10 best moments for the Blackhawks franchise, ever since then, really since the start of the 2016-2017 campaign, here's the list that I've put together, and definitely go and give me your opinions on the list down below in the comment section once I rattle through these, and let me know if there are any moments that I accidentally ended up leaving out. One of the first ones that come to mind, Blackhawks fans, and these are in no particular order, by the way, but one that absolutely comes to mind is Jonathan Toews scoring in his final game at the United Center against the Philadelphia Flyers. A redirect, I believe, from an Andreas Athanasiou shot, or maybe it was a Seth Jones shot. I want to say it was from Athanasiou, and Toews got a little savvy redirect on it right between the goaltender's wickets. But I remember the crowd going absolutely nuts. We all knew it was going to be Jonathan Toews' likely last game at the UC with the Blackhawks, and for him to find the back of the net was such an awesome moment, and definitely one that I will remember watching number 19, the captain, going out in style. Another of the top moments for the Blackhawks from over the last 10 years. Fittingly, obviously the Blackhawks haven't done a lot of winning, particularly in the Stanley Cup playoffs over these last 10 years. So some of these are not on-ice successes, but the Duncan Keith welcome back tribute and his return back to the United Center is one that I remember kind of bringing me to the verge of tears watching, everything that Dunks was able to do for us in the Stanley Cup playoffs, what he meant inside that locker room, what a warrior he was as an undersized defenseman that really revolutionized how the position is played, from the 2 Norris trophies to the Conn Smythe, and just going through all the incredible moments and memories from his historic run as a member of the Blackhawks was super cool. And I remember thinking Chicago will forever run on Duncan. So that's one that I definitely remember. I referenced this one a little bit earlier, but beating the Edmonton Oilers in that best of 5 playoff series where we got to see vintage Jonathan Toews. He was the leading scorer for the Blackhawks in that series. I remember Dominic Kubalik. You all remember him. He had a really good round against Edmonton. Oli Mata and Slater Cuckoo, the third defensive pairing at that time, were doing some work. And I remember that was right as I took over as the host of Locked On Blackhawks. And I celebrated. Even though the Blackhawks had the season not been canceled because of COVID, most certainly we're not going to wind up in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I celebrated because I kind of had a feeling it might be a little while before they get back in that position. And also, whenever you win a Stanley Cup playoff series, regardless of whether it was in the COVID bubble or not, and you deserve to be there, I think it's always worth celebrating. But that was one that was really awesome. Fortunately, the fun times were short lived as the Hawks got pounced by the Vegas Golden Knights in the second round. Another of the top moments that I definitely wanted to bring up was Patrick Kane's overtime winner and his return to the United Center as a member of the Red Wings. Awesome call, by the way, on the Detroit broadcast of that goal. Kaner pumping up the United Center crowd, and I feel like it's got to be the only time in Chicago where a member of the Red Wings has scored the overtime winning goal and got a standing ovation from the Blackhawks fans in attendance. It's got to be something that has never happened before, let alone any road players getting that amount of cheers from the Blackhawks faithful in their own seats. So that was definitely a cool moment and one I had to bring up here. Another came from this past season and was a night chock full of moments that I'll take with me for a long, long time. It was Jonathan Toews' first game back to the UC as a visitor, which resulted in a 2-0 win for the Blackhawks. That was, not a ton of wins down the stretch of the season, so a bonus that they were able to come away with a win. Caleb Williams and Pete Crow Armstrong were in the building, went into the Blackhawks locker room afterwards. But of course, what really took the cake was like the 4 to 5 minute standing ovation that Jonathan Toews received, where he literally had to tell everyone in the crowd, okay, we got a game going on here. I appreciate the love and the support you're showing me right now, but it's got to end at some point here. But that just goes to show how much Jonathan Toews means to us Chicagoans and how grateful we are for everything that he helped, the Blackhawks franchise accomplish and revitalizing hockey in the city of Chicago. He was, of course, at the forefront of it, and that was a super special moment. One that I definitely will remember for a long, long time. Also wanted to bring up the Blackhawks beating the Penguins 10-1 in the season opener to kickstart the 2016-2017 campaign with a bang. I remember also Brian Bickle received one last shift before the start of that game, and then the Hawks went on to absolutely wax the Penguins. I believe that was the last time the Blackhawks have opened up a season on home ice, interestingly enough. Brandon Saad and his return with the Blackhawks had a hat trick. I remember Nick Schmaltz had a really big game as well. That was a real fun one, and kind of makes me wish there were some more season openers at the United Center. But from everything I've heard, the Blackhawks kind of enjoy having a lot of road games during October, November, and December when the Bears are kind of the top priority in town. But that 10-1 season opening win over the Pittsburgh Penguins, I thought was a top moment. Another one from this past season, Connor Bedard's first NHL hat trick against the Senators at the United Center in a 7-3 victory. Super cool to be in attendance for that one, and the first of what I believe is going to be very many hat tricks for number 98 in a Blackhawks sweater. I also wanted to definitely bring up Scott Foster's NHL debut on Brent Seabrook's 1,000th NHL game. That is something that a lot of people forget about the Scott Foster debut. It was Brent Seabrook's 1,000th game against the Winnipeg Jets, and funny enough, I was also in attendance for that one. I remember going with one of my good buddies and a situation unfolding because I think it was either Colin Delia or forget exactly who it was at the time, but whoever was supposed to back up got injured during warmups, I want to say, and then the starting goaltender got hurt. So Scott Foster, the E-Bug, had to come in relief and did a good enough job to get the Blackhawks across the line with the victory. That was awesome. And funny enough, I have a Scott Foster number 90 sweater hanging in my closet right now. Another good one Another top moment for the Blackhawks over the last 10 years, Patrick Kane's hat trick against the Toronto Maple Leafs in his second to last home game. Almost went out with an even bigger bang in his final home game when he nearly scored a buzzer beater slap shot breakaway goal in overtime. But unfortunately, the puck crossed the line just after the buzzer had gone off. But that hat trick that Kane had against Toronto, knowing that his time with the Blackhawks, his time with the team at the UC, his games were running low there. And for him to have that type of performance and went on an incredible run in general over his last like 5 to 10 home games with the Blackhawks, that was absolutely phenomenal. Another one, getting into number 10 here, but I'm going to have a couple of bonus ones that I wanted to bring up. Connor Bedard's Michigan goal against the St. Louis Blues was absolutely spectacular, especially coming against a division rival like St. Louis. Yeah, that was spectacular. And then going on to win the Calder Trophy, being the NHL's top rookie in 2023-24, despite a lack of legitimate help alongside him, proving that he is a premier talent in this league at 18 years of age. And then a couple bonus ones that I wanted to bring up. The Marian Hossa jersey retirement night, I thought was absolutely spectacular. The amount of former Blackhawks legends and stars that were in attendance. Same with Chris Chelios's jersey retirement night. I feel like that was one of the best moments for the Blackhawks franchise over the last few years. And even though it came against them, Alex Ovechkin recording, I believe it was career goal number 800, came against the Blackhawks as well. So you can kind of tell based on these top moments that I just went through, yeah, the Blackhawks haven't done a lot of winning themselves, as a majority of these top moments didn't come from their own successes. It was more like welcoming legends back and their last iconic performances with the team and whatnot. But hopefully when, we are doing the 20-year anniversary celebration for the Locked On Podcast Network, we'll be talking all about Connor Bedard, Frank Nazar, and this young crop of Blackhawks and their incredible moments leading the teams to Stanley Cup victories and epic postseason moments and whatnot. Hopefully the 2036 Locked On Blackhawks, Locked On Podcast Network anniversary show will be chock full, a lot more of those, but that takes care of the 10 best memories, or the 10-ish best memories, I guess I should say, for the Blackhawks since the Locked On Podcast Network established in June of 2016. Let me know down below in the comment section if there are any top moments that I forgot about from over the last decade. But coming up in just a moment, I'm going to go over the Blackhawks' top 10 players from over the last 10 years. But first, I got to talk to you all about one of today's sponsors here on the show, which is Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, that is a job for sponsored jobs. And Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, and location-wise, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So go and spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed. And listeners of this show, you'll get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and make sure you support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this very podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's Indeed.com/podcast. If you're hiring, go and do it the right way and do it with Indeed. Real quick, just a reminder, if you're enjoying what you're watching here today or what you're listening to, please make sure to go and smash that like button, subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel, and also go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Segment 2 here on today's episode, though, as we continue to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the Locked On Podcast Network, wanted to go through the 10 best Blackhawks players from over the last 10 years. And quite honestly, Hawks fans, I think there's a pretty clear consensus top 8, top 9 here, in my opinion. Who that final spot goes to, I think is a little bit interesting. And just like segment 1, if there is a player I happen to be forgetting about, or if you think I misranked any of these players, although I will say I think the ranking depends on who you're asking, as we're all going to have different opinions on each of these players and how they rank out. But if there's someone you think I left out or completely messed up upon, make sure to let me know down below in the comment section. But the number one Blackhawks player from the last 10 years, even though he was the MVP 2016, 2015, 16 campaign technically doesn't count in this run. What he accomplished in 2016, 17 being, I believe, the second highest point scorer in the entire NHL and continuing to be a point per game player all throughout the rest of his time with the Blackhawks. I got to give Patrick Kane the number one spot. At number two, I think this is where it gets interesting, though, because over the last 10 years, obviously, like I said in segment one, a majority of the Blackhawks icons from when they won 3 Stanley Cups in 6 years. A majority of them were still around in, 2016, 2017, and a handful of them were around for a couple of years after that point as well. But in terms of how well they played or how they rank against each other during that stretch of time compared to, like 2009 to 2015, 2016 is a completely different question. So at number two behind Patrick Kane, I think it is a little bit of a debate, but I'm still going to go with Jonathan Toews, even though he kind of had some up and down years there and obviously had to step away because of the illness that he suffered. I still am ultimately going to go with him at number two here because I feel like his decline might not have been as rapid as Duncan Keith's. Could maybe give an argument for Keith being at number two over Toews, and I wouldn't have any real problem with it, but I do feel like Keith's play really declined there over those last few years. Probably didn't help that there wasn't a ton of support for him on the blue line, and he was still having to play like over 20 minutes per game while he had all that mileage on his tires and was aging. Certainly didn't help his cause, but I'm going to go with Jonathan Toews at number two, Duncan Keith at number three. I'm going to go with Marian Hossa at number four, but quite honestly, you could make an argument that Big Hoss deserves to be at number two because of the way that he went out in the 2015, 2016 campaign. He was a 20 goal scorer in his final year in the NHL. So went out probably playing at a higher rate than Jonathan. Well, Jonathan Toews is obviously still playing, but in the 10-year stretch that I'm talking about, the decline wasn't as sharp for Marian Hossa. However, his sample size, I mean, he was only around for a couple of years when we're talking about the last decade. So that's why I have Hossa at number four. I'm going to go with Brent Seabrook at number five, still giving him the legendary status, even though, yes, obviously his play did decline a little bit, but it probably didn't drop off as sharp as the other guys, although Brent Seabrook didn't last as long as some of the other guys that I just mentioned as well. At number six, I'm going to go with the Breadman, Artemi Panarin, and skills-wise, I mean, you could probably make an argument for him being number two in this category, right, in terms of, like, best Blackhawks over the last 10 years, most talent, the point producing, the impact that he made on the Blackhawks team. Yes, you could make that argument, but I'm giving the other guys the legendary status for being three-time Stanley Cup champions and still holding a huge impact for what the Blackhawks were doing in 2016-17, 27-18, and 2018-19. But the Breadman, what a couple of years it was, man. The magic that he and Patrick Kane had. I mean, they were so good. Artem Anisimov was having like 50-point seasons, just playing in between them, driving the net, and putting his stick on the ice. What a life he was living. So I went with the Breadman at number six. At number seven, I go with the Cat, Alex DeBrincat. Had some really good seasons with the Blackhawks until, unfortunately, ended up getting dealt to the Ottawa Senators. The return has been very underwhelming considering Kevin Korchinski hasn't established himself as an NHLer. I would say slim chance that Paul Ludwinski is going to be an NHLer. And then I think the other player in that deal, oh man, who was it? Wasn't Ryan Green. That was the Marc-Andre Fleury trade. Gavin Hayes, I believe, was the Kirby Dach trade. I can't remember exactly who the third player was in that trade, but regardless, tough to see Alex DeBrincat go for that type of return, knowing even though it was only a one-year stint for him in Ottawa, they kind of got screwed on that deal. The type of player that obviously he is. Blackhawks were in a little bit of a tough position there as Kyle Davidson wanted to go with the full restart. But Alex DeBrincat, I'm going with number seven. I do have him behind Artemi Panarin, though. At number eight, I'm giving a tip of the cap to Corey Crawford, man, because even after the Blackhawks' final Stanley Cup in 2015, Corey Crawford was playing high-level hockey whenever he was healthy for the Blackhawks up until the very end of his career, right? And it's unfortunate, the way that he had to go out, it kind of, seemed super fast. It all happened so quick. But whenever number 50 was suiting up, Blackhawks had a chance to win a game. And when the stakes got higher, Crow only seemed to improve his level of play. So got to give Corey Crawford a shout out here at number 8. At number 9, I'm giving a shout out to the kid, Connor Bedard. I think he's got to be somewhere inside the top 10 best Blackhawks players over the last 10 years. Only current member of the team that I have here inside the top 10. And then rounding things out, as I said, I think it's a pretty clear-cut top 9 here, Blackhawks fans. At number 10, you go a couple of different directions. You go with Nicholas Hjalmarsson, even though, like Marian Hossa, over the last 10 years, he was only a member of the Blackhawks for one or two of them. His impact, obviously, he never gets credit for the impact that he truly had on those Blackhawks Stanley Cup teams, but not a lot of time with the Blackhawks over the last decade. You could go with Dylan Strome, even though he never racked up a lot of points with the Blackhawks, has turned himself into a very sound NHL player, and I'm very happy that has been the case for Dylan Strome. Could also go with Brandon Hagel, who, I mean, man, what a start his career got off to here in Chicago, but I never envisioned that he'd be the point producer and consistent impact player that he's became for the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's pretty incredible to see, and I'm super happy with him. Could also go with, someone like a Nick Schmaltz, former first-round selection. But I think those are undoubtedly the top Blackhawks players from over the last decade. Let me know down in the comment section below how you kind of rank everyone in that list and if there's anyone that I forgot here. But coming up in just a moment before I wrap things up, I want to talk about some Blackhawks legends that we cannot forget played for this original 6 franchise over the last 10 years. Make sure to stick with me for some fun. But first, I got to talk to you all about the final sponsor on today's episode, which is FanDuel. The biggest stage in world soccer is here, and every match feels like it has the potential for a memorable moment. One goal can completely change the energy of a game, shift momentum, and alter the outcome in an instant. And that's what makes tournament soccer so exciting, from the opening whistle up until the final kick. And right now, FanDuel is giving fans another reason to stay locked into every match with every goal pays. Bet on a match, and you'll get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. And more goals means more bonus bets. And all you have to do is turn on your token. And the United States second group stage game is coming up in just a couple of days against Australia, the Socceroos. And what a way to start with a dominant victory against Paraguay. Could not be more excited for the game on Friday. And from the opening whistle up until the final kick, go and check out Let There Be Goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com right now in order to get started. Again, that's FanDuel.com. Segment 3, while I was going through the Blackhawks rosters from over the last 10 years, man, you would not believe some of the names that popped up that just absolutely blew my mind. Guys, that shame on me for completely forgetting about their times with the Blackhawks organization. And I mean, just during, kind of the Stan Bowman era where he was bringing in a lot of different players, mixing and matching, plugging in guys to try and keep the franchise competitive, to Kyle Davidson taking over and tearing everything down and starting over with the rebuild. There has been a lot of different players coming in and out of this franchise over the last 10 years. And I just wanted to go through some of the names that I'm sure will give you all a little bit of a blast from the past, like it did for me when I was scanning through all the rosters on Hockey Reference yesterday. But the final segment for the 10-year anniversary of the Locked On Podcast Network anniversary. Let's get into some of these Blackhawks legends. Starting things off, y'all remember Tomas Jurko? I remember getting him, I believe it was from the Detroit Red Wings, and I thought there were capabilities there of him being like a decent goal-scoring winger. Maybe we got him from the Dallas Stars. I think he had stints with both of those organizations. Never really found a home anywhere in the NHL and kind of just fizzled out. But Tomas Jurko was a bottom 6 guy who younger me had a little bit of belief in and didn't end up panning out, of course. Here's another one for you, Blackhawks fans. Dennis Rasmussen, former 4th line center for the Blackhawks back in like 16, 17, 17, 18. penalty killer, decent at his job, didn't really provide you with anything offensively, but Dennis Rasmussen was around for 2 years, year and a half, something like that. I don't know, but shout out Dennis Rasmussen. Shout out Tanner Caro, another guy who I remember in like the Blackhawks Twitterverse would always be like discussed of having potential, and obviously that never played out to be anything. Same with this guy. Y'all remember Victor Edschel? I think he only ended up playing like 6 NHL games with the Blackhawks or something. Believe he was involved in the Ryan Hartman deal, and the Blackhawks got him back in exchange for Hartman. Big body, didn't really have a lot of pace, obviously, and never ended up amounting to anything. But Victor Edschel, winger, remember him, blast from the past for sure. Carl Dahlstrom, number 63 on the back end for the Blackhawks. Never really did anything significant, but had some decent underlying analytics whenever he was on the ice. Shout out Carl Dahlstrom. He had some all right times with the Blackhawks, I thought. Lance Boma and Tommy Wingels. Remember that offseason where Stan Bowman brought in those two guys and brought in another Blackhawks legend here, Cam Ward, and it was like Brandon Manning, Brandon Davidson. My gosh, that was a brutal one. Shout out to former Flame Lance Boma and Tommy Wingels. I believe we ended up trading him to the Boston Bruins. Wingels, I think, was an Illinois native. Colin Delia, mentioned him earlier in the show. Shout out Delia for sure, a Blackhawks legend. Had a iconic moment with the Ice Hogs, strutting like he was Conor McGregor. Jeff Glass. Do you all remember when Jeff Glass was having to be the Blackhawks starting goalie for a little bit? If my memory serves me correct, I believe Jeff Glass started a New Year's Eve game for the Blackhawks when I was either late in high school or early in my college years. And I remember watching that with my buddies celebrating New Year's, and Jeff Glass was in between the pipes for the Blackhawks. Here's another one for you. Another guy that his potential always got brought up. Dylan Sakura was excellent. Point per game player down in the AHL with the Ice Hogs, but never could find a way to have it translate in the NHL with the Blackhawks. Someone who a lot of people thought had, top line, top 6 potential. Nope. Never ended up being the case. Alexander Fortin. Remember him? Had a lot of speed. 84, I believe, was his number. Decent penalty killer. Could absolutely fly, though, but didn't really do a lot of anything aside from that. Kind of Victor Stahlberg-esque was Alexander Fortin. I mentioned Cam Ward already a little bit earlier. Zach Smith. I honestly completely forgot he was even with the Blackhawks. I think he got hurt and only ended up playing in like a handful of games or something. But yeah, Zach Smith, former Ottawa Senator. Madison Bowie definitely categorizes as a Blackhawks legend. We ended up flipping him in exchange for a draft pick that turned into Ethan Del Mastro, so that ended up working out nicely. Another guy kind of in the Zach Smith category, Brett Connolly. Remember when Brett Connolly was playing for the Blackhawks? I don't think he played very many games either. I remember him kind of having a weird situation. I think was ultimately bought out. Here's another name for you, Blackhawks fans. Mike Hardman. Remember when he signed out of college late in the season? Physical, fourth line forward. Could hit and be a big body. That basically sums up Mike Hardman, Blackhawks legend. How about a Wyatt K before Wyatt Kaiser? The WKFC wasn't originally the Wyatt Kaiser fan club. It was the Wyatt Kalynuk fan club. Yes, true Blackhawks legend, Wyatt Kalynuk. A couple of Mark legends for the Blackhawks here, and Matthias Janmark, who the Blackhawks ended up flipping in those draft picks. I know one of them turned into Colton Dock, and then the other turned into Samuel Savoie. So that pick ended up, for Matthias Janmark playing half a season for a meaningless Blackhawk squad was a worthwhile trade, I guess. We'll see what Savoie, if he turns out to be anything here with the Blackhawks. And then Lucas Wallmark, who we got from the Florida Panthers, fourth line grinder. Blackhawks legend here for sure. Carl Soderberg spent half a season with the Blackhawks. It might have been the same year as Matthias Janmark even. Henrik Borgstrom, I believe he came along with Lucas Wallmark and maybe even Brett Connolly from the Florida Panthers. What a time that was. I don't even know what Stan Bowman was trying to accomplish. Jakob Galvis. You all remember Jakob Galvis? Had a pretty decent NHL stint. I remember Blackhawks fans begging to see more from him. Spent a lot of time down in Rockford as Isaac Phillips's defensive partner. Isaac Phillips, another Blackhawks legend, saw him walking around the United Center this past season after the Blackhawks played the Winnipeg Jets, and he was catching up with some of the Blackhawks. But Jakob Galvis, wonder what he's up to these days. And then a couple from the last couple of years, Anders Bjork got a little run with the Blackhawks late in the season when they really just needed bodies to be in the lineup and they were basically tanking down the stretch. Here's another one for you that will bring up some probable bad memories. Nikita Zaitsev was kind of a traffic cone on the right-hand side for the Blackhawks there for a little bit. But, hey, they got a pretty good return in order to take on his contract and ended up dealing him. And then Jacob Megna, last but certainly not least, Blackhawks legend. Not to get into any from this year because I went through the biggest Blackhawks legends from this past season and my season-ending award shows on the pod not all that long ago. But shout out Jacob Megna right there with Jared Tenorti, guys who were minute munchers on a bad Blackhawks defense. But hey, I believe Jacob Megna's name ended up on the Stanley Cup with the Florida Panthers in one of the last 2 seasons. So it all ended up working out all right for him. Got a good opportunity with the Blackhawks and seemed to have made the most of it. But how about all of those names playing for the Blackhawks over the last 10 years? Easily guys that you could have forgotten about. And that's exactly why they're Blackhawks legends. But that's going to take care of today's episode and today's celebration for the 10-year anniversary of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you all again for tuning into the show. Make sure to go and hit that subscribe button and follow Locked On Blackhawks on whatever app you may be using to listen to your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever it may be. It's all 100% free. Won't cost you anything. Really does help me out in a big way. If you want to check me out on social media, you can find me basically anywhere at Jack Bushman2 for my Strictly Blackhawks account. That's on X. Go and follow at Talkin' Hockey to get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until the next episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.